Okay, we're up to version 5 of the content generator for WordPress. Uh, Lots of really cool stuff on this one. As you can see here, this workflow has grown significantly. This one is also a collaboration between myself and Wayne Ergel, whom you may have seen on YouTube as well. He had reworked some of the article generator portion of this that's producing some really good content. So got a collab happening between Wayne and myself, and this is the new version of the content generator for WordPress. And I've also revamped the image generation portion of this so that it's creating 3 images instead of just one featured image, so that you have options to include that. And we're going to go through this in detail. So hang on, and here we go. To start off, you can see here that this workflow is quite extensive. It has a lot of different nodes, has a lot of different functionalities within it. However, I've structured this so that it is as easy to use as possible. And so I've done that by using a color coding system where the green, the blue, the purple, and the gray boxes, you really don't need to be paying attention to that because those are identifiers of feature sets, if you will, right? So for example, the green boxes represent the content generation portion. The blue boxes are sort of additional support mechanisms or features for that content. The blue boxes here, or the purple boxes are for the WordPress related functions, and the rest here are for the image generation. That said, the places where you need to make changes to this workflow are just in the purple, I keep saying purple, in the red boxes, and you'll see what I mean when I zoom into that. In reality, you just need to set it, I think, here in this one box or one node in the very beginning. All right, let me show you what I mean by that. I look here, this first node, before anything happens, we're going to set the WordPress URL, the Airtable base, and the Google Drive parent folder. So if I click into this, you can see here the WordPress URL is, in this case, iheartpets.com. We have the base ID, and this is the Airtable base where we will be pulling in the brand guidelines as well as a keyword for the article writer. And so if I click into this Airtable, you can see here we have the brand guidelines, right? And so you want to get this piece of information right here. This, after airtable.com slash, this little identifier before the next slash, base ID. So you can see here base ID is APP and ending with 5P5, which matches to APP ending with 5P5 in this URL. So we have the Airtable base ID placed into this brand settings node. The next item we need to set is the Google Drive folder ID. And so here we have, I've already set this up, as you can see, we have iHeartPets 2025 and the N8N content. This is a folder I want the generated content to go into, okay? So the folder ID here in this case is after folder slash, and it starts with 1CS and ends with GBI. So if I go back to my workflow, you can see here for the Google Drive parent folder, it's 1CS ending with GBI. So 3 places for you to set this information so that the rest of the workflow can function, okay? So let's go into each node and see what we are doing here. First and foremost, we want to pull the brand guidelines from the Airtable base. And as I've shown you here, we have the IHP, iHeartPets Content Manager from March 2025. So we got the brand, the mission, the vision, core value, and so on and so forth. So we have all this set, and first thing we do is pull that in in the second node. We pull all that information in. The next thing we do is we aggregate those brand guidelines into a single data set so that we don't have to individually pull. And you'll see why I do that later. Then we look at the article writer, which is also in this Airtable base. So if I go here, so we have the article writer, right? So let's say we have the keyword Pomeranian, and I'm going to delete this so that we create a new one, right? So we're going to say write article here, and yeah, so we have just a regular keyword set. I'm going to delete this information since we don't need that. Okay, so basically all you need to do is put in this keyword, and then we're going to write this article, right, as a status. So this node, get article writer, will take the base ID, which you guys saw previously, and the table ID is hard coded in here because ideally you guys are going to copy this Airtable base and use the same setup for this workflow. And so you can see that this Airtable ID maps to this table ID, which starts with the TBL and ends with IF2, which is what you see here, TBL IF2. And so I'm not doing it by name because if I do it by name, it'll cause some changes to happen in the settings underneath this node, and I want to try and avoid doing that. So I like to do things by ID so that the manual edits you need to make to the individual nodes is minimized, right? And so that's why I have this settings node here in the very beginning so that the rest of the workflow can function without you having to do much. The next piece here is the if, and so we check, is there a keyword and is the status equal to write article? Great. Then we start our loop. You can see that we do have a loop that begins here. Okay, and so the next piece that we want to confirm is the Airtable fields for the agents following in this workflow. So here it says getting working title, description, keywords from the article writer. So this information we pulled from the get article writer. Let's just check that. So we will pull the ID, the title, the description, pull in the brand guidelines, right? And so this is where we have the aggregation of those brand guidelines. So this should, you don't have to touch it. It's already set up for you. So we're pulling in the brand guidelines and setting that data for the rest of the workflows. Okay, the next thing we do is the dynamic writing guidelines and hidden insights. So in this first green box, we're basically pulling in the SERP results so that we can generate the writing style and tone, the goal of the article, any sort of hidden insights that we might be able to pull, and search intent, things of that nature. So this is what these sets of boxes do. And once it's done, it'll set the information in this set node and then update your Airtable base for that article. Next, we refine the working title and set a new title. So another AI agent, set the data, update Airtable. Nothing too magical about that. Here in Airtable, you can see that we do get a new final title field here. That's where it'll update. Okay. Moving on, then we're also creating kind of a key takeaway or TLDR, right? So being able to put that at the top of the piece of content that you're generating, that will be set. Then an actual intro to the content, create the outline, create the main body, write the conclusion. All right, so these green boxes are split into the sections of the blog post. Instead of using a single sort of post to create it, we're kind of deconstructing and constructing that piece of content, and you'll see what I mean by that in the next steps. So once all the pieces of content are generated, in the green boxes, now we have the blue boxes where we're going to sort of put all that those pieces together for the final article, and then also a final edit agent. And in this final edit agent, let me just show you here real quick. If you look at the system message, we have a lot of instructions here. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but I think you get the general gist of what this final editor is going to do. This final editor also is taking into consideration your brand guidelines. Thought about putting the brand guidelines earlier in the process versus at the final edit. So once you get into this workflow, you might want to try that out and play with it and see what works best for your brand. So we got the final edit. And then here, this is just putting together all the final pieces from this output and previous outputs. All the content is generated in Markdown. And so I have a separate node here to convert that Markdown to HTML before it's actually uploaded to WordPress, because WordPress does not handle Markdown very well. So we're going to do that conversion within the workflow. And here, this is where we create the folder for that specific article, and it's going to create that in the folder that we had identified in the brand settings, and it's going to be created based on the title. And this will create a Word document, I'm sorry, not a Word document, a Google Doc inside of that folder, and then add that article content into it. And so we'll use that same folder to populate it with the images that are generated. And then the next blue box that you see here is creating the meta description, adding that to the Google Doc file that was generated in these previous steps. Then the image prompt, also adding that. And then we're going to share that Google Drive file in and add that into the Airtable. So you guys can see here that that's what this set of workflows do. Then we're going to post all of that onto WordPress as a draft, okay? And then we're going to update the RankMath if you're using RankMath. If you're not, just go ahead and turn this off. You can deactivate it and it'll bypass this item in your overall workflow, so no big deal. Okay, but I'm going to keep it turned on, so it'll upload the post, just the text information, right? Then the meta description that was generated, and then we're going to set some other information here where we're going to take the content as well as the post ID that was generated from uploading this draft. So a little bit of a set node, and then we're going to create another image prompt. Okay, so I've got another AI agent that's going to do image prompt, and also if there was any sort of reference URL that it needed to check before creating that image prompt, it'll do so. And the output is structured so that you can see here, we're going to make sure that we're always outputting image prompt, all right, from this agent. The next set of settings here for Leonardo.ai, which is the image generator that we use, you shouldn't have to change anything unless you want to go in and change the model. Right now, this is using their latest model. I'm also just creating one image. If you want to change that, you're welcome to do so. That will use more of your API credits. We're also keeping the ultra setting turned off so that it's not creating the really high resolution images, because in most cases, you really don't need to do that. If you wanted an ultra version, what I would recommend is going into the web interface once the API images are created, then up-resing them afterwards once those are generated. The other thing that we set is a preset style, which is available within Leonardo. What I've done is I've just made it random, and as it's creating the images, I've set it to random. You guys can turn this off and then set that as a hard-coded preset style in this node, where we go out and actually give the JSON to generate the image. So you can see here, we've got the width, the height, the model ID pulled in from the settings, the number of images, the preset style pulled in from the random, the prompt, which is previously generated. I also hard-coded the fact that I don't want any words or labels in these images. I don't want that factor in these. If you want to remove that, you're welcome to do so. The rest of these are, I would advise not to play with them unless you really want to get to that, but yeah, don't play with these, just leave them as they are. You could also include some negative prompts if you want, right? So if you're finding yourself getting, I don't know, 6 fingers instead of 5 fingers, there's some weird body parts happening. I think, you know, you can do some research, a Google search or a ChatGPT session to figure out some negative prompts that you should include as part of your image generation. All right, so that's all done and ready to go. We wait for the image to be generated because we want to get the image ID. And by getting the image ID, we can download the image using the image URL, right? And then we'll upload it to that folder that was created for that article. And then we'll also upload it up to WordPress. And that's where this happens. And so this first image is your featured image, okay? And then what we do next is we create another image prompt based on the content. And the reason we're doing this is we want to create a thematically aligned set of images, those 3 images, that is referencing the first image and then creating the second and third image based on that reference, right? And so that's what this set of nodes do. And I've also included an exponential backoff for APIs because I was hitting some API limits. I don't know why, but either way, if you're triggering this too often, I've built in some backoff mechanisms so that Leonardo.ai API is not rejecting your API requests, okay? So same thing here, get the image ID and then upload it to that folder. With the second and third images, I am not automatically uploading them to WordPress. That part you do have to take offline and upload them yourself from this shared folder. So image 2 and then image 3 is created. And once that's all done and uploaded, I'm going to save all that execution data. I'm also, in this case, notifying my Slack channel that a post was created. Here, you can turn this off. If you don't have a Slack app, just turn this off. You don't need to use it. And then finally, I'm going to update that status to draft ready. So that status is going to happen here. In this create article status, you can see that it says write article, keep, or draft ready. All right. So that is the overall workflow. I'm going to go ahead and run this and show you guys what that content looks like from here. Before we jump into the output of that workflow we just looked at, I want to let you guys know that we've just launched a new community called Right on Target AI. And as you can see here, we're going to focus on content creators, content generators, marketers, and those of us who want to leverage the toolkits that are available to us really around content and keeping that content on brand and on target. Those are the things that we'll be discussing. We're also going to do at a minimum 2 community builds per month where we're going to take some votes on which workflows we should work on that month, and me and Wayne as well will be creating those along with you so that we can share those among the community for the community. In fact, this workflow that you guys are watching now will be one of those workflows available to us inside of the communities. So come in, start your free trial. We don't need a credit card from you. Take a look around, see what's available, see who's available. We're also starting to set up our calls. We already have one on Friday, but we'll definitely be adding, actually, I think Tuesday and Friday are the calls we already have set up. We'll continue to add to that roster of calls so that you guys can keep learning and using the tools that we'll be building. All right, see you there. All right, as you guys can see here, this workflow is in progress. Again, I've extrapolated the settings as much as possible so that when you jump into this, you really don't have to do anything other than that first node and set those the IDs for those folders and the Airtable base. Everything else will work seamlessly, and you guys will see the output here in a little bit. So I'll be back once this is finished running. I should make a note that this workflow, it takes a little while for it to finish because of the fact that we're waiting for the image generation to finish. So And I'll show you what I mean by that. So here we've got green check marks across the board. And again, guys, I want to remind you that really all I did was have to set this in the first node here. But the other thing you do need to do is, obviously set up all the credentials for Airtable, for WordPress, for your language models. Here we're using both ChatGPT or OpenAI as well as Anthropic, so those need to be set. Your WordPress, your Google Drive, all the different credentials. So when you guys get access to this workflow, what you're going to see here is probably red check marks in a lot of these nodes, and that's because you don't have the credentials set up. I'm not going to go through the credentials setup in this video because that should be fairly standard by now. If you have questions, feel free to ask me in the comments, or you can email me, or if you join our community, you can ask us there. Either way, let's see. This ran, and I have check marks across the board. Let's go check Airtable. We've got a little bit in error. Okay, I'll fix that before I upload this. But we do have, let's see. Delete this record. Okay, I'm not referencing back to it's not finding the reference. Okay, I'll fix that before I upload this. But okay, so this should be draft ready, final title, the keyword we had set, get the link to the article. Let's click that. Great, got the title up here. This is the markdown version of the content, not the HTML version that was uploaded to WordPress. So you're going to see the markdown version. If you needed to make some edits, you're welcome to do so. This image prompt here is one that OpenAI created. It's not these image prompts. I'm not uploading those back into the WordPress documents or the Google Doc. So just be aware of that. So, okay, we got Airtable. We have our Google Doc version. Let's check our Google Drive folder. You can see here we do have a folder that is shared. I'm going to double click that. And we have our document, which we just looked at, and we have our images. So let's take a look at these images. All right, we got image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, and image 5. And you guys can see these are great supporting thematically aligned images. Looks like the dog is sort of in the same position. And that's because we are referencing that first image that was created. And back in here, so this image that was created, in this node here where we create the second image, if I click into here, you guys will see there is a setting here. So you can see here that this is the image I'm referencing, the init generation image ID. So I'm telling Leonardo that, hey, this is the image I want you to reference to create this next image, right? And I'm giving it a strength of 0.2. So it's referencing that. I think it goes up to 1. So you guys can play around with this here where you might want to drop it or increase it depending on what results you get. Just FYI. And I'm also here in this, it looks like I set it to 2 images. So I'm getting more than just a 1, but I wanted to make note of that so that if you did want to change how much of that reference material or reference image is used when creating these next sets of images, this is where you can control that in this node, okay? All right, so if I go back out, so similarly, this next set of images has done the same thing. Okay, great. So we got our folder, we have our images. Now let's check WordPress. So I'm going to refresh this. Great. We have a draft here. We have our keyword in RankMath. We have our meta description in RankMath. I'm going to go ahead and preview this first. Great. We have our featured image that is set, right? And then we got our title. And great. It's properly formatted. The markdown was converted to HTML. We have our key takeaways, introduction. Awesome. Got our proper H tags set. So this is all good. Great. All right. So Now that we have this, if I go to the actual editing of the post, let's see what happens here. Awesome. So you will get a score, hopefully, once this finishes loading, right? Okay, got a score of 68. Looks like the basic SEO is all green. Yeah, so image, alt tag. So you guys can go through here and fine tune this a little bit. But for initial shot, that looks pretty good. And so if you wanted to, let's say, add a secondary image, you can do that here. Let me go ahead and convert this to blocks so that's a little bit easier. Okay. And then, so let's say after this paragraph, add an image here. So I'll upload that. Actually, no, I'm gonna have to insert from URL. So let's take this URL, share, copy link. Let's see if that works. And that didn't work. Okay. Nope. Okay, that's not going to work. Trying to avoid downloading it and uploading it back into WordPress, but looks like that is what I'll have to do. Great. So I will skip that part for now. You guys will have to figure that out, but on initial shot, it looks pretty good, guys. Let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and quick edit, publish this, and see what it looks like on the site. So we're in the dog section, our pets. Boom. Now we have that article that is posted. Let's see how it looks. Great. That looks pretty good. And then I also wanted to quickly show you guys, with the Leonardo.ai interface, this is a library of images that are created. And you can see here we have all our Pomeranian images. I also have some other test images here, but you guys can all see that this remains on target, sort of on brand, thematically aligned, etc. If you want to come in here and play around with the actual image tool, you have access to a lot of different models. For example, their Phoenix 1.0 is their latest and greatest. Flux is also fairly new, but I've seen just the best results out of Phoenix 1.0. They also have some other capabilities, but again, feel free to come in here and do some manual image creation if you needed to do so. But overall, this workflow worked pretty good on first shot. Images, content, if WordPress is not something you use, you can just turn off those portions, this purple portion, as well as the upload portions here. Just turn those off if you don't need those. So, and as always, if you get into the workflow and understand it a little bit better, it's just simply a matter of turning off certain nodes so that those features are turned off. All right. That was a lot to cover. Hopefully that gets you excited to be generating content and using N8N for that capability. And again, come join us on Right on Target AI so that we can work on these kinds of things together. All right. Thanks for watching this far. We'll see you next time.